This works. Okay, and we are live on YouTube.
Good evening and welcome to the October 8th, 2020 meeting of the Athens-Clarke County Planning Commission. In response to the state of emergency in Georgia regarding COVID-19, this meeting is being held on YouTube, being broadcast on YouTube. Members of the public may address the Planning Commission in real time via electronic communication provided in the auditorium at 120 West Darty Street, subject to safe distancing measures. For those of you who are meeting remotely, you can find an agenda on the Planning Department website. We will receive public comment tonight on all items. Since we do not have applicants or applications, all of our public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. When you move to the podium, please give your name, address, and occupation for the record. There is a timing device that the staff member there will work for you so that you have a 30-second warning and then a 3. Planning commissioners, if you would please silence your cell phones and remember to mute your computer when you're not speaking. Okay. Thank you all for being here for our second meeting of the month. We just are so excited about being together that we just now getting together regularly twice a month. You received your agenda. Well, first of all, I want, is there someone who will move that we introduce staff reports and all of the documents into the official record? Lucy Rowland, second.
Second.
Okay, Alice, all those in favor, please let it be known by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Yeah, that's great. All those opposed? All right, that's great. So now I'm going to move to the agenda, and I'm going to talk just a minute about how we will proceed tonight. I have spent a little time trying to figure out how to organize us, and I have some suggestions, and I hope that you think these might help us, and if so, you will approve of these procedures, and if not, we will make some changes. First of all, on your agenda, I would like to move the missing middle discussion to the end of the agenda. That discussion is a work session type discussion. This is the first time the Planning Commission has heard that. And we will not, at the end of the meeting, have the summary report to go in the executive summary. We will have consensus. I hope that's our goal, as has been on each other work session, consensus on what we approve, and then staff, along with any assistance needed from the housing subcommittee, will get that summary written, and I'll talk about that in a minute. New business, item number 1 is the approval of the report, which is in response to the mayor's inclusionary development charge. That is the title on the charge that the mayor gave to us. Since every item in this report, excluding missing middle, has been vetted by both the subcommittee and the Planning Commission as a whole, I am going to suggest that we deal with the report as a whole, not individual items, but that we deal with the report as a whole, excluding missing middle. Missing middle we will discuss at the end of the agenda. We will first take public comment on anything in the whole report, and then we will begin our discussion. And those, as you heard me say, those will be 3-minute comments from the public. I don't see anyone in the room now, but we'll certainly check on that when it's time. We will, after public comment, we will then have our own discussion. And I hope to ask you for any issues that you would like to address, change, eliminate, modify, and we will address those. And then I hope agree on that by consensus, like we have all of our other work sessions. I don't see that it is necessary for us to take these items one at a time. We have, as I said, already vetted them as subcommittees and as a whole group. I think our task tonight is to look at what has been written and put into the executive summary and see if we are comfortable with that. If not, this is your time to speak up, but we won't necessarily take those in order. Just if you have an issue, speak up. When we don't have any more items to discuss, I am proposing that we approve this report as a whole report. And I think that approval by consensus is an appropriate way to do that. It will indicate that our whole commission has given our approval to the report. It also is an indication that this report is somewhat different from other business that we address on the Planning Commission and that we send forward. We know that we have not finished with this work yet, but we are indicating that what we have done, we have done all that we can done up to this point, and we need further direction from the mayor and commission. I want to stop there and make sure that everybody agrees on this way to handle this tonight. Please say, I think we ought to do otherwise, if you do. Everybody's in agreement with that? Okay. Then let's talk just a minute about the missing middle report, which will come at the end of the agenda. We will have a work session-like session at the end of our agenda, as we have with other reports that have come from subcommittees, be conducted just like the other work sessions that housing or land use have presented when they presented their recommendations. When we have finished our discussion and can agree through consensus on what that report includes, just like we have every other recommendation, then we'll be finished for the night with that. Staff at that time will take our final consensus approved information and write a summary, just like the other summaries that you find in the executive summary, so that the Planning Commission has opportunity to see and approve that summary. Staff will send that written summary to every planning commissioner at noon next Monday. We will ask each planning commissioner to read that summary and respond to the person who sends it to you. I don't know which staff member that will be, but respond within 24 hours if you can. If there are concerns, express those. And then my suggestion, I don't think that it is logical at this point for us to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. I think to go out once for approval, come back in with any suggestions that we might have about that written summary. And if there are issues, my suggestion is that we let Matt Hall, as the chairperson of that subcommittee, and the planning staff work through those together. So let's stop right there and see if this makes sense about how to address this missing middle final report. Are you okay with receiving a copy by Monday, saying yay or nay, or making suggestions and then leaving it to Matt and staff to work through as they do the final summary for the executive summary? Thumbs up, thumbs down, speak now, or as they say, forever hold your peace. Okay.
Maxine,
The
can I ask a
text
question?
amendments will be handled. I'm sorry, did someone ask me a question?
Yeah, this is Sarah. I just wanted to make sure I understood that. So the document that we're going to be receiving on Monday by noon is just the missing middle housing.
Yeah. Yes, because tonight we will approve of
Right.
everything else, or
Okay.
or not approve. We will make a decision about the rest of the report.
Great.
The missing middle section we're trying to get in, you know, and have it go into the report. So, all right, the text amendments are item 2, and those text amendments have come out of our work on affordable housing. And they are text amendments that we are recommending, that we are going to vote on, whether or not to recommend directly to the mayor and commission at this time. And so because these will be text amendments that we are voting on whether to do it immediately, we will vote for those in our normal voice vote. And that will be, those will be recorded. There are 2 of those. And we'll have a staff presentation on those, public comment, discussion, motion, and vote on those. The last thing is a tree management ordinance, and you got it. I think Rick sent it to us. The staff would just like to tell us why we're receiving it tonight. There will be no action taken on that tonight. Action will be taken at our next meeting. They wanted to get it in our hands. Okay, that kind of sets the stage, unless, does anybody have any change in that's a little bit different than we've usually done. So I want to make sure everybody's comfortable.
Actually, I just want to say that I really appreciate you. This sounds like a great plan, and I appreciate you thinking it through for us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right, then let's begin with item 1 under new business. I talked with Brad.
I think Jim had his hand up. I'm so sorry. Jim Anderson.
Jim, excuse me, I didn't see you. Jim?
Yeah.
Did you have your hand up, Jim?
Yeah, it has to do with the accessory dwelling unit. We'll talk about it when we get to it.
When we get there, okay? Hold that thought, and we're almost there. So it is item 1. We are now going to get public comment on item 1 from anyone in the auditorium. Robin, is there anyone there?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
All right, then I assume since there's no one present, we will have no public comment on this. So we will then move to our discussion. And remember that we are discussing everything that is listed here except missing middle. All right, does anybody, just any one of these, we're not necessarily taking them in order. Staff will keep up with what we say. Yes, Matt.
I did have a question about the ADU thing. We talked about this just a bit in our last meeting last week. The proposal that's written up, that's in this packet, contains the Housing Committee's recommendation to authorize ADUs in RS zones, not RM zones, and to flag for the mayor and commission the whole set of issues that we see that authorizing them in RM zones raises. And the Land Use Committee has raised the question of whether it might not be a sensible idea to add RM zones to that. And so I just wanted to ask, is that something that you think we should be discussing tonight, or would that be a supplemental, thing that we might? Because I think we could discuss it tonight. We might be able to figure out a good way to deal with that without in not too very much time, and then make some minor tweaks to the memo that we're sending to Mayor and Commission. But if you guys wanted to have that be a separate discussion at another date, then that's fine too. I just wanted to ask how you wanted to proceed.
Man, if I could respond to that, when we put recommendation, we really were thinking in the future, but we talked about it, a little bit last week, and from that discussion, I felt even more, and some other land use folks speak that there probably was a little more than we needed to jump into right now, and that we might need to give it enough consideration, any other more consideration than we would have in tonight's meeting. Anybody else? Kristen, I see you nodding your head. You want to speak to that?
Yeah, I kind of feel too that, like, we're delivering. I mean, it's really impressive, honestly, looking at all of these items together. We're delivering it to a mayor and commission that I think is really knowledgeable about a lot of this too, and is interested in it. And so I feel like we're kind of opening that door. And by addressing it down the road, I think it gives us an opportunity to address it down the road. But I think we talk about it in a couple different places, and it opens that door for them to continue to talk about it too. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Other thoughts? Sarah.
I know it's been a little while that the housing subcommittee has talked about ADUs, but I see what you're saying, Matt, and I guess I wonder, would it make sense to include in our housing subcommittee's recommendation, is what you're saying, Kristen and Maxine, is just that adding an additional recommendation around, because right now ADUs are already allowed in RM zones, is that correct? So maybe Matt, you can kind of help me remember sort of where we were when we talked about ADUs and RM zones and what the considerations are. And I guess what I'm asking is, is it so different? Do they need to be treated so differently that they can't really be sort of easily lumped in with our recommendation?
Yeah, I think the question mark on what someone could do now with an RM parcel and an ADU has to do with density. In RS zones, there's no bedroom limitation. In RM zones, there is. And so, and a lot of these very small RM lots are already over their calculated density. They have a 3-bedroom house, and they wouldn't qualify for a 3-bedroom house at the 16 bedrooms per acre rate. So they, practically speaking, couldn't add an ADU. So I'm not sure, Brad and Mark, maybe, is it accurate to say that there's nothing in the code that prevents an ADU from being added in an RM zone, provided that it's within the density, or is there actually another prohibition?
It generally gets into density issues, which are a little bit different. But they are permitted there right now, if you've got a large enough lot, other things like that. I think the other thing to keep in mind, even with you sending forward the report in its current, condition, and I absolutely see this as one as being high on the mayor and commission's radar for wanting you to keep working on it. It's going to come back to you. When it comes back to you, I don't think in any way you guys are limited to only being allowed to talk about single family at that point. You can continue to dig, and let's look at the other issues that may surface in the RM districts because of density by bedroom that are not in RS. And I think it could still go up. I don't think you're hindering yourself from working on it later with the RS zones by not modifying it today.
That's exactly what I was about to say. It's going to come back to us, giving us the opportunity to do in-depth at that. Alice?
Yeah, and thank you, Brad, for affirming affirming my gut feeling about what's happening. I just did want to put stick a pin in this thing. When the housing committee discussed ADUs and RM zones, we also recognize that, and this is actually referenced in another part of our subcommittee report. A lot of these in-town areas that are zoned RM are probably improperly zoned RM, and probably it's a legacy of our systemic racism in assigning land use to property. So that's why I don't want to rush on this one. I really want to get it right. But what we decided as a subcommittee is that we would point that out, that we would like the mayor and commission to consider that there's some problems with some property in town that's zoned RM that maybe should be zoned RS, or some properties the other way around. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that in.
It's really important to remember that there are a lot of single family houses in RM zones. I think we tend to think RM means apartments and condos and whatever. There are a lot of single family houses in RM zones. I own one. And the house I grew up in, old property, you see, that then got covered with the swath of RM when that happened. Someone else down here. Kristen, were you going to make a comment? Somebody had their hand up. Okay. So I don't want to rush this, but please stop me anytime I'm attempting to move us forward if I'm moving us too quickly. So can I assume that we will say it's listed on the executive summary as an item for future, wherever? Yes, at the very bottom of the next to the last page, or yes, the last page in the summary, as an item for future discussion or future study, accessory dwelling unit development standards in RM zones. So, they may even say to us, we're sending ADUs back to you to do this, this, and this, but be sure you deal with RM zone. We don't know what the recommendations might be, but I would suspect they might say that to us. I just feel like that might be the case. So are we okay, Matt? Have we rumbled through that enough? Rambled and rumbled, I guess. Through that enough to feel comfortable to leave it where it is as future study?
I think so, yeah, speaking for myself.
Okay. All right. Then I'm going to assume that that is a settled issue. Other issues on that topic or any others in the executive summary? I want to encourage you to look especially in the area of the subcommittee in which you worked, because if your land use, you have a lot of knowledge about those that are there. If you're housing, you have a lot of knowledge about those that are there. Now, there's some of you who have a lot of knowledge about both of them, but just especially double check the ones that you worked on and make sure that what has been reported here is what you would have as recommended, summarized recommendations. The other thing is that I want to highlight, I know everybody knows and understands, but just to highlight that the attachments, or I'm not sure what the executive summary calls them, attachments or an addendum or whatever, attachments, there it is, are the memoranda that have been sent to the Planning Commission as a whole for our work session vettings. So that will be included. I want to make sure there's not other information that as a subcommittee that you have that you would want included in the report that's not there. Just want to make sure we have everything there. We don't have to send them every single thing we ever did, but anything that would be helpful to them. Do these suffice? And yes, Kristen.
I don't know if I noticed that Jim had sent an email right as the meeting was starting with some suggestions, and they looked. I mean, Jim's like Mr. Eagle Eye, so I don't know if we want to talk about those. I mean, everything looks fine to me. I trust his judgment on it, but yeah, I don't know if that's something we want to discuss.
Jim, did you want to bring the things to our attention in the meeting? Muted, Jim. You're muted. Jim, you're muted. Can you unmute him, Brad? There we go. Okay, Jim, start.
No, he just muted himself. I'll unmute you, Jim.
Okay.
Okay, there you go.
There we go.
All right. Well, basically, I'm generally in favor of everything pretty much, with a few exceptions. And one of the biggest item for me is in the inclusionary zoning memo on page 1, the second last paragraph, which says that the state law allows the city or county to undergo voluntary agreements. As I read the state statute, I think a lot of people that would be opposed to this kind of thing will take advantage of it to essentially stave in or stow in our attempts to use voluntary inclusionary zoning agreements and that we should make a statement about the fact that the state law is not crystal clear on that point, and we should warn the mayor and commission in advance that they may want to start working on that, because if we base everything on the idea that it is allowable and it ends up not allowable, our whole program goes down the drain. And so,
Is that in the memorandum from housing to the planning commission?
yes, it does, because otherwise it won't get to the mayor and commission at all unless somebody does it on the side. So I think this needs to be explicitly pointed out, because the state statute says voluntary agreements are okay if the municipal authority owns the property. And that will rarely be the case in the situations that we're most likely to be dealing with. And so it essentially cuts us out of even discussion if the wrong person reads the statute the wrong way. And I would say that there's a high probability that that's exactly what will happen, because there are people that don't like this kind of stuff. We need to point it out explicitly to the mayor and commission, and it was agreed that we would, but apparently it just got forgotten in the process.
Okay, Matt.
Yeah, Jim's exactly right that we did agree that we needed to add a footnote here. And the memo that's in the packet right now is the same one that went around for our work session when we talked about this. We have not yet made that amendment to it. And I think in the last paragraph on page 1 of that memo, the first sentence of that final paragraph where it says it's very likely legal under state law, I think that's the place to add it. And we'll just drop a footnote that says this is the opinion that we received in consulting with the city attorney. But, you know, a question's been raised about whether that, whether it actually means something different. And then we'll briefly summarize Jim's reading of it and just say, you know, this is something to work with the city attorney, and if necessary, the delegation, you know, maybe they go talk to Spencer and Bill Cowsert and so on and try to get the law made more clear if they think that, you know, the ambiguity in the statute needs to be addressed. But yeah, no, we've already decided to add a footnote pointing out that this may or may not be an issue, but it's something that ought to be looked at more closely by the attorney. And so perhaps in the after this meeting, between now and Monday at noon, staff and I can just wordsmith a paragraph there to raise this.
This really brings up something that I had not thought of. Oh, I thought I had thought of every single little thing I should have known, which is if there are issues in the memorandum, how do we get that corrected? I didn't think of that. And so I think Matt has a good thought there. I think we just need to put the subcommittee chair and the staff connect to them and make sure that those changes get made. Does that seem agreeable, Alice?
Yeah, this is a good time just, to just offer this as a possible service if the committee would like it. I think this memo is great. I think it has pretty much everything in it. It could use a little, polishing, editing, and I know staff has had to pull it together very quickly, and staff has a lot more to do. So I would be very happy to there are a lot of excellent writers on this committee, but it is what I do for a day job. So just some, I'm talking about the small things, not what Matt is going to add in terms of content, but I'm just saying if staff would like some editing help, here I am.
And are you talking about on the executive summary or the various memoranda? Is that right? That's plural.
No, just the executive summary. I mean, it's a
Right.
difficult document that pulls together a ton of information, and you want it to be as clear and polished as it possibly can be. So I'm just offering services if staff is feeling like they really are out of time, because this represents such a tremendous amount of work.
Yes, and Alice, that is very generous. Having somebody to read something, even after they think they've got it together, just to read it, and it is very important. So I know they appreciate that. I'm not speaking for them.
We're talking basic line editing. So Brad, just send me a editable copy if you want me to.
No, I think we would be more than happy to let you put eyes on it between now and Monday and make any recommended changes. Yeah, that we can do that tomorrow. Absolutely.
And you bring a knowledge base too that helps you be able to do that. That's great, Alice. Thank you. All right. Now,
I used to be intended audience for this kind of document. So yeah.
Right.
Matt?
Yeah, I was just going to say on the subject of Jim's comments, he sent around 4 line edits for the missing middle memo, all of which are good. And I would just propose that when we get to discussing the missing middle memo, let's do it on the assumption that all of those 4 changes have been accepted and are part of the memo.
That's great. Just remind us and we'll go for that. All right. Still under item 1, any other comments about any of the various sections in the summary? I didn't ask, and this is an appropriate question. I'm asking you to respond to each of the focus areas that we did, but I didn't ask you to respond to the way the executive summary is put together. If you have any suggestions about that, speak now, because now that we have Alice who's volunteered to help some with that, it takes a little pressure off, and that might, if you have any ideas on that. Otherwise, I don't want to prolong this. I don't want to run it too fast. So if you all are happy with all of these, the way this is put together, the executive summary with some minor changes and edits and tweaks and whatever, then I am suggesting that we just accept this as a report that reflects our work. And Jim?
I had some major concerns also about the 2 documents regarding RS and RM zone minimum lot size and the variable setbacks in the Greenfield subdivision development. Both of those memos refer to code section 9-7-3. But unfortunately, because of the revisions, you're going to have massive conflicts between one version of 973 and another. And I think some effort needs to be made to introduce proposed new section subheading numbers so that you can tell whether you're dealing with infill or you're dealing with greenfield. Because right now, the one document is solely based on the infill regs, and the other one incorporates now greenfield regs, which throws away all of the infill regs for projects bigger than 2 acres. So I think we're going to open a hornet's nest if we don't get that clarified in the version that's sent to the mayor and commission, because they'll be confused as all get out. I certainly am.
Well, I'm a little confused at what you're confused over, so someone help me.
Well, you have the table showing various usages, setbacks, and side yard, front yard, backyard, etc. Well, both of those documents label it as section 9-7-3. The version used for the RS and RM minimum lot discussion uses what are effectively the infill regulations. The version for Greenfield substitutes Greenfield standards for a number of those on plots that are 2 acres or greater with 5 or more houses. So my point is that if you cross them off in the one, it looks like you've gotten rid of the occupy the same place that the infill standards were occupying in the chart. So you
Okay,
need to label a new section and give it a new heading so there's no ambiguity.
I've got you now. Bruce, I see, is saying he can take care of that. Bruce, did you want to speak to that or just take care of it?
I mean, I'm happy to take care of it, but I can explain, you know, we were looking at those as 2 standalone documents. And so if the planning commission decided not to move forward with one, but to move forward with the other, at least we've got something that can be taken as an isolated document and be dealt with that shows the changes to the code as the code exists right now. What I didn't want to do is have recommended edits from one topic mixed in with another topic, but we can find a way to, based on tonight's discussion, let's put it this way, if both of those are moving forward, we can make both of them consistent with one another.
All right, good. I think that's all Jim wants, is for them to be
My main
consistent.
concern was, let's say that for some reason in a well-established subdivision, there happened to be 2 acres available. The question is, are we just going to revert that to Greenfield standards, or are we going to, since it's an established neighborhood, keep it to the infill standards?
A wise woman asked that same question. I'm sorry. Bruce, you want to answer? You want to give the answer you gave the wise woman?
Where the 2 acre threshold, I guess by code, and Brad may want to jump on this too, but if we've got 2 acres of land that's either in whole in its entirety or it's assembled, it would follow in other parts of the code as if it were following a major subdivision type of process. It would not be treated as infill. Brad, am I saying that in a way that makes sense?
You are. Yeah, I mean, the way the chart reads, right, I may be muted.
No, you're right. You're right.
Okay. You know, it kicks into following limits apply to subdivisions of 2 acres or more and 5 lots or more in lieu of minimum lot size. So a single 2.2 acre lot in an existing neighborhood that somebody came in and wanted to simply cut one parcel out of it would kick back to those. I mean, we may need to tweak the language in the box to say parents totaling 2 acres or more and included as part of subdivisions, not or.
That's on page 3. On page
It's
3.
on page 3. I think we need in the middle there. I think we need to say in the box, change the or included as part of subdivisions to and included as part of subdivisions of 5 lots or more.
See,
I think that would.
Jim had something really important that we needed to take care of. Jim, we're so glad we have you around. Any other thoughts? Jim, have we covered everything that you
That's everything I came up with.
You're great. Thank you very much. All right, then I based on what I have seen and heard, I am assuming that we have reached consensus that with these couple of modifications that have been suggested tonight, we think this is a report that reflects our work and we would like to send this forward to the mayor and commission. Brad told me today that he will present it to them, and that's great. That's very good. So if anyone is in disagreement, I need for you to speak now. Otherwise, we're going to move forward with sending this report to the mayor and commission. All right, let's move on.
I'm sorry, Maxine, do we need to vote on that, or that's all we need?
I checked with Brad about this. I think that with this type of report, we can do our vote with consensus, and we can send that right on. We're going to get a lot of it back. Consensus is a voting mechanism, and so it just felt to me like this is kind of the way we've worked our way through this, and it seems to continue to do it this way. However, I won't be offended if people think that it would be better to do a voice vote. We certainly can do that. Okay, then we're going to move on. Let's look at item number 2 under new business, which is the text amendments. And so now we're kind of reverting back to regular old planning commission procedures. And so we're going to take the first one, which is RS zone building setback standards. Remember, these are the 2 things that have surfaced in our work that we feel comfortable going ahead and asking the mayor and commission to act on. So the staff member that's going to share this with us, you're on. You're muted, Brian.
Okay, there we go. Okay, the first one was the RS zone building setback standards. This is the one we discussed at our last meeting as trying to eliminate the sliding scale standards for infill for new subdivisions, major subdivisions that are generally 2 acres or more and 5 lots or more, while still maintaining protections for that individual lot in a neighborhood that gets split into 2 lots, or a house that is torn down and there are new building standards or a new building to be built. So that's what this does. I would recommend the one change that Jim mentioned earlier on page 3, which is changing the or to and. But other than that, by moving this forward, this frees up some flexibility for new neighborhoods while still providing protection for the older ones.
All right, thank you very much. I'm looking, I still see no one. Robin, do we not have anyone in the auditorium, I'm assuming?
You're correct. There's no one here.
All right, so then we will have public input since we have no public, and we will move to any discussion, questions, whatever that planning commissioners may have. All right, if there are none, then I will hear a motion for to recommend this to change the mayor and commission.
Can I ask
Sarah?
a question before you do that?
Absolutely.
One thought that occurred to me was whether or not this will create some sort of conflict, or if we're going to need to deal with if we move forward with something around cottage courts as infill, right? So it's while it's not going to be if the minimum is 2 acres for the parent property, in town there's not a lot of 2 acre lots, but if there were a handful of 2 acre lots, those are the lots that would be appropriate for cottage courts, amongst others. And so I guess my question would be, what do you think makes sense? I mean, I'm in favor of this text amendment, absolutely, and maybe it just needs to stand on its own. And then if cottage courts are introduced or discussed in later committee work, then we can deal with that then. But I guess I would just, point out that would be a situation actually where it might make sense for the infill sliding standards to apply, that would be actually more appropriate.
Staff, can you help us with that?
I can. I think, Sarah, you're absolutely right. Just about hopefully 2 to 3 months too early on the question. I mean, it is absolutely going to come up along with a lot of other things that we're going to have to consider. I mean, right now, the way it's worded, if you were to do a cottage court on less than 2 acres, it says and or fewer than 5 lots, you're going to be subject to infill standards. And that may ultimately be something that you don't want to do with cottage courts. Maybe you do if they're within certain distance, maybe you don't. But I would say go ahead and act on this now, and we'll keep that in the back of our mind as we move into trying to draft language for cottage courts ordinances, provided the commission directs us to do so, and look at it then.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay, thanks.
Good point, though.
I'm sorry, the chair told me to mute my cell phone. I did, but I didn't. It just went off. All right. Any other question about this? All right, then I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the RS zone building setback standard.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second it.
Any other question or discussion about that? Then, Rick, can you do a roll call vote on that, please?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Kidman,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Rowland,
Yes.
Tucker,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Beresford,
Yes.
Goodrum,
Yes.
and Hall.
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous.
All right, thank you, Rick. All right, we're going to move to the second text amendment. And Brad, are you presenting that?
Yes, ma'am, I am. And the second one deals with minimum lot sizes and bedroom densities in the RM zone. This is the amendment that I know from a staff standpoint that we were all struggling with trying to understand what Kristen was talking about when she kept bringing this up, and we didn't get it. And then it finally, the light went off and we got it. And basically what this does, back in 2010, staff realized that developers were kind of finding a loophole in building units with way more bedrooms in our RM zones than were otherwise allowed by subdividing new lots. And so we established new language that said if you create a new lot after the date of adoption, you're subject to the bedroom density based on the size of the lot. But we didn't feel like that was fair for people that had existing lots that had been around for many years. And the initial position from us was that everybody should have a right to build at least a 3-bedroom house on a lot of record that's been in place prior to December of 2010. What we're proposing now is what we're seeing with that is there are some really, really small lots out there with older, small houses on them that are nowhere near to meeting bedroom density of 3 bedrooms, but they may have a 1-bedroom cottage or a 2-bedroom cottage on them. They are being torn down and replaced with new 3-bedroom houses because they can, because it's an existing lot. So what we're proposing is the minimum lot size in all RM zones for a legal lot of record is 5,000 square feet. So if you've got 5,000 feet or more on an existing lot of record before 2010, you get a 3-bedroom house. If your lot is legal non-conforming and that it is smaller than that, you only get a 2-bedroom house. And we're hoping that will possibly curtail some of the tear downs on some of the really small houses for building new 3s. That's the proposed amendment. I would like to get that one done quickly too, if possible.
Okay. Public comment. Seeing that there is no one in the auditorium, we'll have no public comment. Planning commissioners, discussion. Yes, Kristen.
I did have one question about the wording. I was just wondering why it says shall be eligible to contain a 2-bedroom house. I was just wondering why it didn't say like mirror the wording of the other, where it was like you know, a maximum of 3 bedrooms. Why not say shall
Maximum.
contain the maximum of 2 bedrooms? You know, that the shall be eligible just seemed like I'm eligible, but I can also, you know, it just, I don't know, it seemed like it was more optional than anything.
Yeah. That's a good point. Anybody want to respond to that? Is there any holiness in the words you have there, or could they be modified?
I think that could be modified. I'm just, you don't, if we change it to which do not meet a minimum of 5,000 square feet lot size shall be eligible to contain 2 bedrooms or
Or a maximum of 2 bedrooms.
a maximum of 2 bedrooms.
Will be allowed.
Yeah.
We
So
can
it's really all you're doing is adding maximum of to that sentence. Shall be eligible to contain a maximum of, well, a maximum of a 2-bedroom house.
we can do that.
Oh,
Okay.
really, just 2 bedrooms. We're kind of getting into the ADUs, right? Because we don't want to say. Anyway, I don't want to go any further, but bedrooms, period.
Okay, got it.
We're all kind of thinking differently about things. It's very interesting. I think that whole concept that suddenly ADUs comes to your mind is good. I mean, it's good. All right. Any other questions, comments? All right, then I will enter. Oh, Sarah.
Do you all, does staff, do you deal a lot with sort of people building houses and hiding sort of a 4-bedroom house or disguising it as a 2-bedroom house quite a bit? And is there anything, if so, is there anything in this text that could be added or modified that might help a little bit with that? Or is that just one of those things that happens and hard to manage with code?
I don't think there's anything in this section of text that this wouldn't be the right place to put it. There is language in your ordinance right now that talks about counting bedrooms and or any other rooms. I mean, it calls out kitchens, bathrooms, and maybe living room or something, but any other room that is designed like a bedroom, we're to count it as a bedroom. Now, to answer your question, do we have a hard time with people hiding bedrooms?
Yeah.
I could tell you stories for hours about what we have encountered. And, and a lot of times what we will run into is and a lot of times it is with the best of intentions. Somebody wants to put a study in a house or, something like that. Well, if it's a study with a door, whether it's got a closet in it or not, it's a bedroom from our standpoint. We've seen dining rooms that did not have case openings, but had closed 3-foot wide doors with a very large closet to store their china in the name of a dining room. We call that a bedroom. The solution for that has been that we require generally a minimum of a 6-foot case opening into any space that is like that, so as to not call it a bedroom. It's not perfect, but it's the best thing we've got right now. But as you move into that one's been on y'all's radar for a while. That's certainly something that could be revisited down the road too, to try to strengthen that language some.
Could benefit from some strengthening.
We can't do anything about, the person that comes back in and puts a wall between a large bedroom and turns it into 2 after CO, unless they are, a lot of times the building community out there has been pretty active on watching each other because they're all competing for the same market. And so we oftentimes hear about this after the fact from somebody else, or we see it on Zillow and we know we permitted as a 3-bedroom house and it's now being marketed as a 5-bedroom house. And where did those come from? But we can talk about that later, or I could go on for a long time.
Joey?
I think that's a kind of a slippery slope if you're going to say like a a door going into a study is a bedroom that the county's going to call the bedroom. It's got to have a closet and an egress window exterior to be a bedroom by definition for appraisal real estate purposes. So, I mean, I know that's a slippery slope when you said 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom, but just because somebody has a study, and if they put a cot in it, I mean, that's where somebody's sleeping, but that's not a bedroom. And for, I think, government purposes and technical purposes for this, we need to stick to what's truly defined as a bedroom.
Other comments? All right, then I will entertain a motion. Matt, you're muted.
I see that now. Yes, I move to approve the text amendment to section 9-8-3 as submitted with the tweak to the language that Brad and Kristen just arrived at.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Kristen. All right, any other final questions or comments? Then Rick, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Okay. Hall,
Yes.
Kinman,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Rollin,
Yes.
Tucker,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Beresford,
Yes.
and Goodrum.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Thank you, Rick. All right, we are going to move now into item number 3 under new business, the tree management ordinance amendments, for which we do not have to take action tonight, but Brad's just going to tell you what you have.
And I am going to turn this one over to Mark Beechuk, who is our arborist. And his role really tonight is just tell you where this came from, what we're asking for you to look at, kind of its purpose, and then we will be back for detailed discussion next month. So, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, guys. The community has been looking at a few ordinance issues for quite some time in their policy subcommittee. Some of those were brought to them from some county commissioners as well as some outside sources. They, in their role, they have plans to have a larger attempt at an overhaul of the community tree ordinance. However, that's going to be a 12 to 18 month process at a minimum. And in the meantime, they had a few things that just needed a little bit of updating. So what you see in there should be some simple updates to some references that are in there. In case you didn't know, we had a new community forester about 1.5 years ago. And he's a very diligent guy that brings a lot of urban forestry to his role here in the county. And so he just wanted to make some of those updates real quick. And that's really all it is. It's not Scrivener's errors, but it's things that are kind of akin to that. So that's all they're looking to get past right now. You will certainly see some future work from them, I would imagine around this time next year, as they would like to look over the full tree ordinance and bring some suggestions forth that would come to this body before it ever go to the mayor and commission.
Thank you, Mark.
Sure.
Okay, so we know now what we have, and this will come to us for a vote at our November meeting. Is that correct, Brad?
It will be on your November agenda for consideration. If you're not comfortable, you don't have to vote for it, but it will be there. Yes, ma'am.
All right. So we'll move on now to I want to laugh and say, and so do you feel a difference? Now we're moving into a work session. We've done all of the above tonight, every different kind of meeting there is in this meeting. But so now we are going to ask our housing subcommittee to lead us through their document and their recommendations about missing middle. Sarah, did you raise your hand? Did I need to call on you?
Well, I'm sorry to make you backtrack a little bit, but I just wanted to, I had a question about the tree ordinance, and that is, Mark, is there anything, I know you said these are mostly kind of text edits, but is there anything substantive you would want to bring to our attention or that you feel needs an explanation? The only thing I really see maybe is just changing those distances in the table, but is there anything that you anticipate we might have questions about, or is it all, quite a bit of it is streamlining a few text bits or updating it?
Yeah, the distances and the separation table should be very minimal, and those are the only things of any substance in there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Maxine. You can move
I
on.
get to
from this
move
side.
forward.
Yes.
Yay. All right. I'm going to turn this over to Matt or whoever is representing his committee and leading this discussion.
Thank you. Y'all have seen the memo that we wrote, including the changes that came out of Brad and Bruce's and my conversation yesterday. Just to kind of sum up the idea here, the predominance of single-family zoning in Athens on 93% of the residential land is sort of in conflict with what Athens actually needs in terms of a mix of different sizes of housing units and different levels of affordability of housing units. It's something in the neighborhood of 50% of the households in Athens rent rather than own. Many of those households are a single person or a couple, it could be a young couple without children, could be a retired couple. A lot of people just don't need a large house on a large lot and don't want a large house on a large lot, but our zoning prevents the market from filling that need. So there's kind of a gap here that our almost exclusively single family zoning creates. So, we need, of course, we need affordable housing. And part of that is that we need far more small units. We need 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom units and even 1-bedroom units. And the zoning prohibits that in a sense, in that it requires large suburban lot sizes in every neighborhood. 5,000 square feet is a pretty good sized lot. And that's the smallest lot we have anywhere. And the zoning only allowing a single unit on each such parcel makes it unaffordable in two separate ways. One, it drives up the price of land because there are fewer developable parcels and fewer units can be built. And then secondly, if a lot costs $150,000, builders want to be able to sell the house for $750,000. They want to be able to sell it for about 5 times the price of the land to make a profit. And the result of that is you see, instead of 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom houses, you see 5-bedroom houses, and the square footage of the houses and the bedroom counts of the houses gets larger. And so it's just not meeting, our zoning is preventing the market from meeting a segment of the housing mix that Athens needs. And all of that comes back to that we have an excess of single family zoned areas. So many of us went to the webinar with Daniel Paralek, the missing middle housing guru, and a bunch of us also have had a chance to look at his book. And as we've seen, those of us who have had that opportunity, there are a lot of different ways to address these problems that we're talking about, a lot of different devices and mechanisms that can be used to facilitate the market in meeting that segment of Athens needs. At this point, what we have decided to start with is what we called sort of the low-hanging fruit, like the easy, almost no-brainer kind of changes. We could do something far more dramatic, like reduce lot sizes in many of the zones, or other sort of rezoning type things, reduce street frontage requirements, et cetera. At this point, we thought maybe the more incremental, appropriate way to proceed was to authorize duplexes and cottage courts on appropriately sized lots. And what we mean by that is, first of all, in zones RS5, RS8, and RS15 for both duplexes and cottage courts. And for duplexes, any lot in those zones we think would be appropriate for a duplex, for 2 separate dwelling units. And the idea there is you got a $150,000 lot and you can build 2 dwelling units, then the land only costs $75,000, and then it's not necessary to sell the house for $700,000 anymore. You can sell each of the 2 sides of the duplex separately for half that or less. And cottage courts wouldn't be appropriate on each and every lot in those zones because just the nature of a cottage court, they're built around a central courtyard. They've got to have certain dimensions. The lot has to be bigger than 5,000 square feet. It's got to be quite a bit bigger, and it's got to have significant street frontage just to make the dimensions work. And so, as you saw in the memo, we suggested, 90-foot minimum width, 10,000 square foot minimum area, and a cottage court can include 4 cottages or anywhere up to 12 cottages, depending on the lot size. And what's commonly done in a lot of other jurisdictions that are ahead of us on this is to say the number of cottages you can build is just a straight line based on the square footage of the lot at something like 2,500 square foot per cottage. So if you got a 10,000 square foot lot, you can only do 4 cottages. If you got a 20,000 square foot lot, you can do 8 cottages, etc. And so that's our proposal in a nutshell. Let me just highlight a couple of proposed amendments. One is Jim's what Jim sent around, the proposed amendment to allow 3 cottages rather than 4 as the minimum, which is something we may want to talk about. I think the argument for it is then instead of a 10,000 square foot lot, you would only need a 7,500 square foot lot, and that a 3 cottage court could be a delightful little cottage court, and maybe that's perfectly fine. I think Jim's statement that some other cities have done that is accurate. We've seen a lot of ordinances where it goes from 4 to 12, but we also did see some in our research where they start at 3 cottages. And so personally, I'm agnostic on that. I think that seems like a perfectly reasonable change, but that may be something that we want to discuss. I'm not haven't had a chance to poll the rest of the committee on that. And then the second proposed amendment is part of what I sent around in the red line this afternoon on page 4, because in talking with Bruce and Brad, they pointed out some just questions that they had on the subject of duplexes and concerns about that. And one solution that came up as a way to essentially do exactly what we're proposing is to do it as single family attached rather than duplexes. Because although I think in layperson's terms, many people think that's the same thing, a structure with 2 dwelling units and sort of a firewall in between, single family attached, and could be a duplex, could be single family attached. The way it's defined in our code has this difference. Single family attached means each of the 2 units is on a separate parcel. There's actually a property line where the common wall is. A duplex, that's not necessarily the case. And so a duplex might be owned by a single person who lives in one side and rents out the other for help with paying the mortgage, or a duplex might be owned by an investor who rents out both sides. For a variety of reasons that maybe Brad and Bruce may want to talk about, they said, an alternative way to do a lot of what we're trying to do here would be to say, as the code now says, single family attached would be a permitted use in those zones, in RS5, RS8, and RS15. But it would no longer, if a developer chose to build single family attached on a parcel, they wouldn't have, the reason you don't see very much of it now is because there's no change in the lot size. So in an RS5 zone, you can do single family attached if you have a double lot. And then you build them in such a way that they each have a lot that meets the 5,000 square foot minimum lot size. So you don't see a lot of single family attached. There's that one on the corner of Lumpkin and Carlton Terrace, those 2 brick, it looks like a duplex, but there's actually a property line down the middle of those 2. And we went by there on our field trip a couple months ago. And you just don't see much of those. And so I think consistent with Brad and Bruce's proposal, the way to get at what the committee was trying to do using the single family attached device instead of the duplex device is to reduce the minimum lot size, to say, if you build single family attached, then you can do it on a half size lot. You can split an 8,000 square foot lot in RS8 into two 4,000 square foot lots and have them individually owned, which we would then need to, as Brad pointed out, need to put a square footage limitation on the units. Otherwise, some developers are going to build a 7,000 square foot structure with two 3,500 square foot houses instead of a single 3,500 square foot house, which does nothing at all for affordability, right? And so if we were to go that route, I think we'd say like a half, you can split a conforming lot in half and do a single family attached with a cap on the square footage of, 1,400 or whatever, something that leads people towards doing smaller, somewhat more affordable dwellings. After we talked yesterday, we just agreed we would put it in our memo that we intend to send to the Mayor and Commission as an either or. We could do it with the duplex device or do it through the single family attached device. There may be pros and cons. What I would expect is that if we send this on to the Mayor and Commission, like everything else, the things that they're interested in are likely to come back to us with some indication of their preferences and their thoughts on which would be a better approach. And so we could get into the nitty gritty of if one or the other of these is more suitable. I think at that stage, for now, all we need to do is send it to them as, more than one way to skin this cat. Let us know what y'all think. And then the Mayor and Commission can let us know what they think. Do you want to call on people? I see Sarah.
Sarah.
Can I get either from Brad or Bruce or both why you wanted to do that?
Sure. The primary reason that one of the big concerns that I've got is that if you've got single family zoning districts and regardless of the number you establish for a definition of family in a single family zone, I think to introduce a housing type that affords multiple houses on one lot, you start to kind of whittle away at the legal defensibility of that definition of family. If you've got zones to where it's called single family, but you can do two family on it by right. And so I own a house, my neighbor built a duplex on his, we both rent to people. I can only put two unrelated in my house. He can put, four unrelated on something that looks just like mine, except there's not a property line in it. So I think attacking it from the single family attached product first still puts one house per one lot, which kind of continues to defend the definition of family and single family a little bit more. And there's all kinds of things to say about definition of family, and I know there are a lot of opinions on it. The biggest thing that I have concerns with is it's really about the last good protection that we've got to try to curb the investment developer in the single family neighborhoods for building student housing. Because by law it's two people. A cottage court, as cool as it sounds, and I can't wait to start working on it with you, would make a great 8 unit on a half an acre, and they're all filled up with kids from the same fraternity, for example, or the same sorority. So I just have real concerns with protecting the definition of family with these types of changes without having more thought given to it. And I think that it does the same thing. We allow single family attached in RS5 and RS8 zones now. In RS5, you can go up to 4 attached. In RS8, you can go up to 2. The only difference that I would make from, the only place we allow it right now by right are in new subdivisions, major subdivisions, and the lots on which the single family attached product is placed has to be at least 100 feet away from the boundary of the neighborhood. So it's got to be an internal component, kind of what you get over at High Ridge when you go into the High Ridge area where there's some attached product in one of those sections there. But you can't do it as an infill product in RS at all. And so I think that could be a good next step is let's look at ways that we could do it as an infill product by forcing smaller unit size. You're starting to just barely dabble into form-based by doing it. If you restrict it and you're trying to keep your overall structure at the same size as a single family house, this one just has 2 units in it instead of 1 that are separated. I think it's a good starting point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be good to have that discussion. And my understanding is that we won't get into the nitty gritty of it here today.
Right.
But the one thought that does occur to me is just, a duplex is not always a side-by-side thing. And in fact, many of the examples that we looked at that are appealing are, a little bit more, whether this is appropriate for Athens or not is a different conversation. But, so I guess what I would say is hopefully we get the opportunity to keep talking about this. But I just wonder if we couldn't figure out, and again, I think in the spirit of incrementalism, what you're talking about makes sense, but maybe down the road, sort of consider whether there is some language that could be used around the definition of family. Like if there is a way to not necessarily create an exception, but to do something that's legally defensible that, still allows what we would, what it would be as defined as a duplex, but something that might, because I understand that what you're talking about, like needing to protect from that happening. So, hopefully we'll get into it later, but just the idea of sort of taking away a duplex, which is really just a little bit more, we're talking about like the duplex that we don't necessarily want is a side-by-side shoebox thing. That's not, that's the point of the design guidelines, would be to go into some different directions with it. So, hopefully we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But yeah, so I'll just leave it at that.
Well, and I would say a lot of that too, and this charge has become really massive, and y'all have done awesome work with everything you've done on these committees. We have been talking now for about 3 or 4 years, and then we're all ready to do it, to get into looking at the land use map and more of a modification of that to where you've got an urban center and a suburban and a rural, and you may have zones that are very similar, but in different land use areas that carry with them different standards. I mean, that may be the opportunity in conjunction with what you're talking about. 20 years ago, we got rid of all the zoning districts that were listed as general residential instead of single family. And those general residential districts allowed duplexes. To me, if we're going to try to go back to something that is more traditional with a much broader use mix to where you may be able to do a triplex or a quad that's stacked over the top, that really is more of a general residential classification. And that may be totally appropriate for some in-town areas. The challenge there is going to be when you start to identify where those areas are and people are changing from RS to RG, for example, they're going to be lively meetings. I'll leave it at that, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it.
They also, I think we have to be really understanding. No, that didn't sound right. I'm not asking us to be understanding. We have to understand that where people put property, put buildings, is really, we have to, and this was my concern the night that Mayor Gertz came, and I said to him, he kind of looked at me, but it is, people then build those where they can get the land. And where they can get the land is generally not from the people with power. And so then we have to be really careful about that we don't end up making certain areas and certain places have people continue to abuse. So that, I wasn't talking about this in particular. I think about anything we do related to this, we have to be really careful that in order to make something happen, you don't give away your soul just to make something happen. There have to be some hardcore values about how we make decisions related to that and who's going to be impacted and how. So those are, I'm sorry, this little sidebar there. Kristen.
I mainly wanted to say that I loved this memo so much. Like, if someone could have like an emotional reaction to a memo, I had that reaction. Specifically to the edited version that went around today. I really like the changes that were made. I did want to add, and I guess this is maybe piggybacking on kind of what Sarah was saying in a sense, but this idea of like, let's not get into this mindset that a duplex is two equal properties sitting next to each other, you know, or triplexes, three identical things. I did like, Brad, the direction you're going with not calling it necessarily a duplex or a triplex. I think that when people automatically hear duplex and they think of something very specific, and that's not always the case, and nor does it mean that it's substandard housing. And so, you know, you can easily say, oh, we now allow pineapples, and pineapples are technically duplexes, and people will feel less like visceral about it. You know, it's just, it's interesting living in a house that is essentially a single family house, but we have a basement apartment. So now we're a duplex. So, you know, I think people don't, you know, and I think it also starts to overlap onto ADUs too. So are now basement apartments technically a duplex, or is that an ADU? You know, so, and again, this is sort of like getting down the road into these discussions, but just, you know, I guess just to say that I like where this memo is, and just as we pursue this further, to think about how we want to envision, if we're getting into like design standards and things like that, you know, it could be interesting to see more duplexes in like suburban neighborhoods where the duplex is tucked underneath the single family house kind of thing. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Other comments? I have a question. Did you all? I'm very. I really like what you're bringing here. But I don't even want to say the elephant in the room. It's. I mean, it is something that's bold and right on us, and it is. How have places that are, say, the size of Athens, but have a major university, how have they handled this kind of thing? I'm so, I see this as such a possibility for providing housing for people, but I can just see it gets jumped up in a second with students. So what knowledge do you bring to us about places that have major universities and are going in this direction? Matt?
Yeah, a lot of the example ordinance we've looked at on many of these issues, inclusionary zoning, ADUs, all of this stuff, come out of places like Lexington, Kentucky, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Ann Arbor, Michigan. You know, our peer college towns they're all dealing with the same thing. You know, some of those are Lexington's much bigger than Athens, of course. You know, so some of them have the student impact on the existing housing market is, I think, bigger here than it is in some places. And one variable is some universities house more of their students for more years than UGA does. You know, UGA is growing enrollments a lot faster than it's building dorms. And so they are creating a tremendous amount of new demand for housing that they're not meeting. And so, you know, yes, we are alike to, you know, those other cities, but they also have, in some cases, universities that are handling it differently. And so it takes the pressure off to some degree. And I think, as Brad said earlier, you know, the single family ordinance, although, you know, a lot of people have different opinions on it, like it does serve as, maybe the last backstop against a complete student takeover of areas that are close to campus. So as we talk about like cottage courts and duplexes, I think part of the idea is in both cases that individual ownership of units is a partial solution to that problem, right? I mean, like, yes, indeed, an eight cottage court could have 16 members of the same sorority living in it, but if the ordinance is crafted to require it to be designed and built for individual ownership, if that's something that we can legally do, and the builder builds it and then they sell the cottages to individual people, that's not, they could still theoretically be rented, but it's far less likely that 8 members of the same sorority are going to all be there at the same time to buy all 8 cottages, so we are trying to create both more rental units and more owner occupied units. But I think, having it be in single family zones helps to the extent you're dealing with units larger than 2 bedrooms. Of course, even in a single family zone, a 2-bedroom unit can be occupied by 2 unrelated people. And so the family ordinance doesn't do a thing on that. But if you've got a cottage court where it's predominantly 3-bedroom houses, then that's the single family ordinance does act as a break there. And if you've got a duplex where both units are 3 bedrooms, then the single family ordinance acts as a break on the student takeover there. So I think doing it in single family as opposed to multifamily zones sidesteps a little bit of the problem, but not all of it. It certainly is a problem. And it's going to be a problem as long as UGA is growing and builders aren't building apartments fast enough to keep up.
When's the last time the university built a dormitory?
I'm not sure. They've been remodeling a bunch. I guess, is it probably those East Campus Village ones?
Yeah, I think that's the last time, and that was quite a while ago.
East Campus was the last one, and that was built as a public-private partnership. And the university, it's very interesting they did it. It's the reason why the university demanded that kids come back to school, because they needed to have the bonds paid for the rentals for those particular dormitories on East Campus. It's some sort of a public-private partnership. And I'm trying to remember, I was in France, I think it was in 2008, with a architect from Atlanta. And so we're looking back about, 12, 15 years ago is when they were built. And he told me that the building quality was so bad that when the university took over the properties in 30 years, when they would mature, that they would have to be torn down. That's how badly built they were. But that's the last time, and I would guess it was about 2005.
Yeah, it looks like they opened in 2004.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I the same year I elected to the commission. And Lucy, I know you're right, but did they not add beds with the big remodel of Myers Quad?
I'm not sure that was that a remodel, or didn't they just tear down the building? Rutherford?
Yeah.
Isn't it Rutherford they
On
tore down?
Rutherford, but then rebuilt it kind of, but anyway, I feel like they ended up adding beds, but there was not a new dorm by any means.
I can't be sure they added beds. I know that they upgraded the systems because they were in such bad shape. But I would say that overall, they've not added a lot of beds since East Campus. And before that, I think 1973, that's when the high-rise dorms on Lumpkin went in. They didn't add any new beds after that. But the university didn't grow that much either. It was about 21,000 students in 1972. And it had not grown that much. I was on university council in the 90s. And that's when Chuck Knapp came in and he said, we need to grow the university, which I think at that point was around 27 or 28,000. So you went from the 1970s to the 1990s, and it grew from 21,000 to about 28,000, I'm going to guess. And he said it needed to grow, and he put a cap. And this was about 1994, because that's when I was on University Council. I was on for about 5 years. He put a cap, or Board of Regents did, of something like, at first it was 33,000. It's crept up. But it was a 33,000 cap in about 1994. And then they added very gradually, I make a note, over the time to get it up to that 33,000. And since it's kind of crept up, but also you have to remember, they also added the Griffin campus, the Tifton campus, and Gwinnett. And those all count in to those gross numbers of students.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to note, because I mean, I think people living in Athens are feeling the effects of the growth of the university, and we fear that it is very much driven by the increase of the student population. We don't exactly know from year to year how many new students are coming in. But as Lucy suggests, I think it's a creeping number that grows a little bit every year. We had that huge bump in the 90s. It was, but other aspects of the university, continue to bring more people in. We hire more faculty, we hire more staff, we hire more administrators. So I think it's a continual upward pressure on the housing market at all levels.
Not sure as you have professional school, like the vet school, when I was on faculty there, when the vet school actually, I mean, it had some tremendous boost in number of vet students they brought through. I mean, we started out with something like 30 or 40 each year, and now I think it's 70 or maybe even 90 students each year. College of Public Health is new. Now, that may cut in to undergraduate enrollment. The undergraduate enrollment may not have grown. It may have actually, fallen off a little bit. But those students in the medical school, those students are a different brand of student. Mm-hmm. They're not the same thing as undergraduates going, fraternities and sororities and things like that.
Okay, it is a very convoluted issue, isn't it?
Could I ask one question? Matt made this comment earlier, and I find myself in different conversations not knowing the correct answer to this, which is it true that student apartments are not getting built fast enough? I feel like that kind of, I was thinking about like the GIC report and some things we've looked at, and I think I just wanted to know if anyone in this group knows the actual answer to that question.
I don't know the actual answer to it. I was going to tell you, a lot of times that question, it depends on who you ask.
Yeah, maybe that's why it's unclear.
The people that are the investors that are looking to build new apartments look at the numbers, and if the saturation rate based on the information they have is extremely high, to them that's a signal for the newest and the latest and greatest that comes in. They're going to get the market. I mean, you could look at it another way, and from a planner's perspective versus a developer's perspective, if you've got a high saturation and you're not currently experiencing a ton of pressure in your neighborhoods with students moving in, then you may be at a pretty good balance point. And certainly not, and when we talk about it every month, but I mean, we're looking at 6,000 or 7,000 new beds that you guys are being asked to consider or are in the process of being built, which, it's.
And I'm not even sure if we wouldn't really be able to measure that student pressure into neighborhoods, or would we? Is there a way to measure that? Not really, right?
Well, it's just so different than it was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, where the pressure was University Heights and Green Acres and and Kingswood and some of those more suburban neighborhoods where the kids were renting houses, which is what drove the real definition of family issue. But not as much of that anymore. But obviously, where we have seen a lot of pressure in the last 20 years has been on First Street and on Odd Street, and in those East Athens areas where the land was generally less expensive and the structures, if there were structures on the lots, were of less value, and so it was easier to buy and tear down and combine if necessary and build much larger houses for kids to rent.
And people less powerful. I have to throw it in there. People less powerful.
I think that this will be, you know, in a lot of ways, if we, and I hope we do get the opportunity to discuss this further, is that it's figuring out how to, you know, explore and implement these gentle density housing sort of typologies as a way to help affordable housing in a college town with a set of really sticky challenges. You know, like it is, and especially, I didn't realize that, Matt, until you said that, which is that, you know, each university has a different model for the extent to which it provides housing. So it's solvable, or there's certainly worth trying things to try to work on it. But I think that will be a lot of our conversation more centered around that.
And I'm really glad to hear what Matt said, because you know, addressing that, you're addressing it from a whole different standpoint. And who's to say the city has ever said, you know, you're bringing in kids, but you're not building them places to live. You know, at what point does the solution for some of this have to do not with what we build and where we build it, but what conversations we have with whom? You know, there are just multiple ways to look at solutions, and you know, so when this comes back to us, even some of those kinds of comments are not inappropriate to add to what we said. So anyway, all right. I was going to be through by 7, and it's 7:07. So didn't make my goal.
Just have one comment.
Yes, Jim.
I went to grad school in Madison, Wisconsin, and Madison had the whole central part of the city basically slum-like student housing. It was really a bad situation. Athens is much better off than that. But I served on a committee appointed by the mayor maybe 10 or 12 years ago regarding whether we needed more housing for students. And the general agreement of our committee was that no, we didn't. But here we've got at least 6,000 to 8,000 more since then, and still more on the way.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing to get a good answer to.
It is. That's why I said it's such a convoluted problem. All right. Any other things? Remember that we're a little curtailed on this in terms of our ability to make changes in it. We are going to reach consensus on whether this is appropriate to be a part of our report. And then if that is a yes, then they're going to write something, send it out to us. And then if there are issues, Matt and staff have to solve them. So I don't want to stop us from addressing issues that you all think need to be identified in this. But otherwise, we can move forward. Any other remaining issue? Matt?
I just wanted to make sure we make a decision on Jim's point about should we just go to 3 to 12 cottages for cottage courts, and change the memo accordingly. There's 2 or 3 places where we reference 4 cottages, 10,000 square feet, and I think it could be 3 cottages, 7,500 square feet, in accordance with Jim's suggestion. It seems like a thoughtful idea, but you know, maybe that's something that we need to discuss or vote on, because that would be a change we would make to the memo y'all have seen.
Yes, Alice, and then Jim. Oh, you didn't have anything, Alice?
I was just putting up my 3 fingers to say I'm happy with that.
Okay, good. Jim?
Yeah, the suggestion of 3, I originally proposed that maybe we could also go down to 7,500 square feet. But as I thought about it, and as I read some of the other part of Matt's discussion, the suggestion of a 10,000 square foot minimum was, I thought, very good. And one of the proposals of that is that there be up to 2,500 square feet of common space. And so if we went with 3 cottages and stayed with the 10,000 square feet, we'd guarantee there'd be at least 2,500 feet available for common space, and that would make a very nice, fairly comfortable arrangement that wouldn't be too crowded.
Okay, housing folks, you need to leave this discussion. Thumbs up for which suggestion that Jim has made? He's made 2.
Let me just say, the 2,500 square feet of shared common area is a common feature of these cottage courts ordinances, and that nothing count. Like if you have a narrow strip along the fence that's 12 feet wide, that doesn't count. There's not much you can do with that. It's got to be 20 feet in every dimension at least to count. But the footprint of these cottages is often in the neighborhood of 600. It might be a 1,000 square foot, 1.5 story cottage, but the actual it's 30 by 20 or it's 24 by 32 or something. 600-700 square feet footprint. So just to clarify, in regards to the last thing Jim said, 3 cottages I think could comfortably fit on a 7,500 square foot lot with ample room for common space. The idea was not that each cottage would be on a 2,500 square foot parcel. It was that, the whole parcel would need to be 2,500 times the number of cottages, which is why we had 4 cottages and 10,000 square feet. So if we were inclined to go down to 3 cottages, I would say the consistent thing would be to drop the square footage accordingly, although I'm open to persuasion.
I think for me, I think at this point, which number we use, it's not going to be binding anyway, because I just feel like I don't quite have enough information to know if, the part that we, the other major part of this kind of development activities is sort of the economic feasibility of it. And I don't know much about sort of 3 versus 4. I don't know if allowing 3 then makes them more makes more of them happen, which of course is something that we want, but at the same time, a slightly higher number would make fewer happen initially as kind of a more stepwise approach. Like, I feel like one of the things we talked about in our subcommittee that's important is that that cottage courts is more than a housing typology. And oftentimes is sort of a way of living together that people seem to want, more than any of our other sort of missing middle housing typologies. I think this one is its own sort of unique beast. And so in my mind, when I think of just 3, it feels less like a cottage court and more like an excuse for a developer to get as many as he can on a piece of land. And so I don't know enough about it, but that's just my sort of knee-jerk reaction to it, that you get that number too low and it becomes a housing typology. You get that number a little higher and it becomes a way of people living together with green space. That is this more sort of intentional, it's sort of intentionality, I guess, behind a choice to develop in that way.
Would this be one of those things like the other, was it ADU that we were talking about, that this is going to come back? When it comes back, we're going to do a lot more in-depth kind of work on it. And so at that time, it wouldn't be inappropriate for us to say, in our additional work, we have found that 3 is appropriate, or whatever, so that we're all wallowing in our ignorance here a little bit, except for Matt. He's got it down, right, Matt? But I think Sarah has a point there that we kind of need to know a little bit more before we say, oh yeah, 3 or oh yeah, 4, knowing that we are certainly likely to get this back. We'll get it back and we'll do the work. Jim?
Yeah, the main advantage of what Matt just suggested of cutting the square footage is that there would be more lots that would actually be feasible to even try to build cottage courts. That's my main reason for kind of sticking with a lower number. But I can see Sarah's point as well.
Yeah, and I guess I just, if it's coming back, I think that I would be comfortable with either number. I guess if we were voting, I would say I'd rather it stay at 4. I don't care about it a ton right now because, unless we think that it could accidentally, whatever number we put in then lodges it into the commissioner's brain and it can't get out. But my vote would be to keep it at 4.
I guess the only thing I would just add is, and y'all are kind of all touching on this now, I mean, and this is one I'm pretty excited about from a staff standpoint, but, if and when this one comes back to you, it is going to be such a complex set of amendments to the ordinance to make it happen and make it happen right. To get stuck on whether it's 3 or 4 tonight is not necessary. I mean, we're going to have to change subregs. It's all good and it's going to be fun to do, but there's a lot of work still.
Yeah. I think that's the case. It's going to come back. We don't have to weed out this detail tonight, in my opinion. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Sure.
Okay, then I need to know, is everybody ready to say we want this focus area to be included in our report that goes to the mayor and commission?
Yes.
Feel good about that? I'm looking at everybody, trying to see some signal or sign. Okay, then that's great. Then that certainly is, I saw it. I think I saw everybody's hand. So we will move forward with that, and you will get something by email by Monday noon. And then if you would try to by Tuesday noon respond to the person that sends it to you saying yay or nay. And then if there are suggestions, if there are any suggestions, then Matt and staff will work through those, and we certainly trust them to put it in the executive summary.
So
Okay.
just for clarification purposes, what staff is going to produce is the missing piece of the executive summary that's not there right now. What the housing committee and Matt are going to do is to take the memo that he sent out today with the track changes and the edits on it, clean it up, and get that to us as well.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll do that.
Very good.
Great. Thank you, Brad, for bringing that back up. So we are now at the end of our agenda. Brad, did you have, I don't have anything. We certainly not having any further subcommittee reports. We've exhausted that. So do you have anything you need to share with us?
The only thing I have quickly is that it appears we're somewhere between 8 and 10 new items for the November Planning Commission cycle for rezones, many of which are really big. We've made the decision right now that it is probably, given the size of a lot of these, including the one in Winterville is back, probably best to handle this with 2 meetings again. So go ahead and plan on the regular first Thursday meeting, and then I will send something out to all of you next week with some options. It does not have to be on the next Thursday. If Thursday's problematic, it could be the following Monday or Tuesday, or I'll send dates out, get a consensus, and then we'll go ahead and schedule it. But just it'll more than likely be the week following your regular meeting one evening.
All right. I just can't close without saying I am so proud of us. I think we have done good work. We have not overextended. I think to send it to the Mayor and Commission now like it is very wise. And then see what direction they give us, and then we are willing to move forward. So I think that that's really smart. But you all have given an enormous amount of time. And so I just think we have to pat ourselves on the back and say I think this will have made a difference for our city. So thank you to the staff for their help. They've been great. And anyway, just thank you. Yes, Lucy.
I don't want to leave the meeting without everybody hearing about Maxine's award. So Maxine, you've got to tell us about your award again.
Yes.
I'll get my little letter over here. I sneaked this in to some few friends that were here, but we're really excited. Our book has received an award from the Georgia Archives. We are named the recipient of the 2020 Award for Excellence in Documenting Georgia's History. And so we'll get recognized at a virtual session on the 15th. But we're really thrilled. We never started out thinking we would be getting awards of any kind, but it's exciting. And this last week, I got a thing from Environmental Design as they are working on something about Cars Hill and also Newtown, but their primary source is our book. And so it's really exciting to see it be useful in the community. I'm really glad. So anyway, thank you.
Congratulations.
Lucy. All right, then everybody go your merry way and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.
Good
Bye,
night.
guys.
See you guys.
Take care.